I bring you peace from another galaxy.
Onko mistään kulttuurisesta tai teknologisesta kysymyksestä puhuttu ja kirjoitettu vuosikymmeniin niin paljon kuin digitaalisista tietoverkoista ja internetistä? Yhteiskunnan verkostuminen on kulttuurimme keskeisin lähitulevaisuuden alue. Se koskettaa meitä kaikkia kaikkialla, teollisuudessa, työssä, kotona ja viihteessä. Suomen sanotaan olevan maailman verkostunein ja mediateknologiaa eniten per asukas käyttävä maa. Siksi on hämmästyttävää, miten vähän kriittistä, arvioivaa keskustelua ja tutkimusta alalla on. Nykyinen tietoyhteiskunta-utopia on kaupallinen strategia kulutusyhteiskunnan koneiston ylläpitämiseksi. Mutta verkoilla on taustalla myös kommunikaatioyhteiskunnan eli kuulluksi tulemisen idea. Sillä kommunikaatio, halu kertoa asioita, tulla ymmärretyksi, on kaiken sananvapauden perusta. Siksi internet on ollut niin voimakas ja läpitunkeva kulttuurinen kenttä. Se perustuu pitkälle ihmisten oma-aloitteisuuteen, tarpeeseen tulla näkyviksi mediavirrassa. Internet on nyt 1990-luvun puolivälissä menettänyt impeytensä, esikoisuutensa. Mistä se kulttuurisesti, ei-teknologisesti tulee ja mihin se on menossa? Alan keskeisin mielipiteen muodostaja Wired-lehti rekisteröi hiljattain käsitteen digitaalinen vallankumous. Vallankumous tavaramerkkinä, kaupallinen vallankumous, kuka kumoaa ja mitä?
That is so absolutely ridiculous.
Wired, for about the first 2 days of its existence, was thought by many people to be the new space for the techno-hacker, middle-class, upwardly mobile, I want my BMW, particularly in the United States, person who is called yuppie, really. An upwardly mobile, middle-aged person who doesn't really understand a great deal about what's at stake. And after about their second day, it was very clear that Wired was in business to make money.
No mä luulen, että tämä on kyllä ennen kaikkea ollut lähinnä PR-temppu ja varsin onnistunut sellainen tietenkin se, että onko se hyvän tavan mukainen on sitten toinen kysymys, mutta siinä kyllä näkyy myös se, että yhä selvemmin näistä asioista on tulossa bisnistä, ne on kauppatavaraa, niillä tehdään rahaa, niillä tehdään paljon rahaa, joten tällaiset asiat tulee hyvin tärkeiksi. Ja nimenomaan tällainen brändierottuminen ja muu on kyllä selvästi tullut verkkoon ja se on varmasti tullut jäädäksi.
I think a lot of people believed the hype that Wired was putting out, that this was the magazine for the new generation and this was about all the wonderful digital revolution and it was about freedom and it was about get your own modem and get online and be free and see the world, and it was all crap from the beginning. It's just another magazine that wants to make as much money as it can. So trademarking the words digital revolution is not a surprise, really. The extent of their rapaciousness, of their greed, is, I think, more of a surprise. I didn't think that they would be quite as utterly, ruthlessly greedy as they have turned out to be.
I think the net has never been a place that's truly free.
I'm very critical about this.
No se on yhtä vapaa kuin muu yhteiskuntakin meille.
The net was never free. It was always an illusion.
If we speak about freedom of the net, actually maybe that has only been a very short period in the history of the internet where it maybe only was a dream of a certain group of people. Actually it has a military history, it has been an academic network, not really connected to freedom. So there was a certain pioneer time when people could do whatever they like. Now that the big companies have moved in, and the state is now slowly starting to understand what it is all about. And there's an urgent need to regulate it in order also to let it grow. If we speak about free access, a lot of people still are very much interested in this, so that a larger amount of the population can use it.
I think in general in Western society, I mean, things are kept free as long as they don't bother anybody. I mean, it's always a question of getting enough attention to the point where somebody notices you, and at that point they can clamp down. So obviously, even if there's basically free speech and free email on the internet for most people, it's obviously not free if when you stick your neck out, you get shut down. And I think that's always been the case. I mean, I think this kind of thing is a constant battle. I mean, I don't think we can afford to be naive and think that there was some golden time I mean, obviously the internet was built originally, for the military and academic purposes, and it only accidentally became this medium that we've grown to depend on. And I think it's something that we have to fight for.
I think that all the things going on are always, especially in the so-called West, connected with capital and money. So for me, the question of internet, now it's like a revolution, but I think that all this question of censorship that is going on, about actually censor, for example, I was reading the China case. The whole, actually the state is having the control who and what kind of internet and website you have there, and you can go in and look, because they are actually make censorship to all the information coming from Taiwan, censorship, I don't know, to all the other images of China going from America. So in this way, I think it's a really question of politics and money. And especially because you have all this kind of special program, Microsoft and so on, that you can use to have a better access. So I don't think that it's a revolution. Can be, but it will be a revolution when you will have, like always, some kind of underground or some to call innate criticism groups working and making this really a tool for communication that is actually not part of the power and money and capital.
Se on yhtä vapaa kuin puhelinverkko tai kirjesalaisuus sinällään, kirjeen lähettämismahdollisuus. Myös julkaisukanavana tavallaan se on yhtä vapaa kuin ilmoitustaulu jossain kadun varrella. Niihin kaikkiin pätee erilaisia sääntöjä, jotka rajoittaa sitä vapautta toisaalta, mutta takaa sen vapauden toisaalta. Siellä on selvät puitteet sille, että mitä se vapaus merkitsee.
Sähköpostista ja tietoverkoista on parissa vuodessa tullut lapsipornon jakelukanava.
Tässähän on niin kuin yleensä keskustelussa menty varsin pieleen, koska nimenomaan on väitetty, että siellä on esiintynyt sellaista väärinkäyttöä, että siellä todellakaan ei ole esiintynyt. Ja nimenomaan just nämä lapsipornon väitteet on ollut pelkkää panettelua. Että nimenomaan sehän on monta kertaa osoitettu, että siellä ei sellaista materiaalia ole niin kuin julkisuuteen mennyt.
Suomi sai viikonloppuna kyseenalaista mainetta, kun englantilainen Observer-lehti väitti lapsipornon leviävän maailmalle suomalaisen palvelintietokoneen kautta. Kirjoituksen leimaavat mätäkuun jutuksi niin suomalaiskoneen ylläpitäjä kuin poliisikin.
Sitä palvelinta ei käytetty välikappaleena ollenkaan, se ei ollut siinä ollenkaan mukana, vaan se oli lavastettu näyttämään se viesti siltä, että se tuli tältä palvelimelta, että se haluttiin saattaa huonoon valoon nimenomaan lavastamalla tämä. Että se ei ole koskaan kulkenut sen palvelimen kautta tämä viesti, joka silloin oli siellä sen kohun taustalla. Tämä on itse asiassa asia, joka nimenomaan on tietenkin sellainen hyvin kriittinen komponentti, kun katsoo tällaisia palvelimia maailmalla, että ne on hyvin helppo lavastaa syyllisiksi kaikenlaiseen laittomuuteen, nimenomaan jos halutaan vaientaa tällainen kanava. Ja tässä nimenomaan on oikeastaan hirveän selkeät rinnastukset sitten esimerkiksi juuri lehdistön lähdesuojaan ja niin edelleen. Eli määrätty suoja tällaisella palvelimella tulisi olla juuri sen sananvapauden takaamiseksi. Toki on myös selvää, että jos siellä selvää laittomuutta esiintyy ja väärinkäytöksiä, niin kyllähän silloin siihen tietoon pääsee käsiksi. Eli kyllähän siellä se vastuu myös on olemassa. Tässä on ehkä tärkeämpi keskustelu ylipäätänsä siitä, että meillä oikeastaan on sen sijaan, että meillä on tällainen perinteinen julkaisuvastuu, niin kun me puhutaan internetin näistä interaktiivisista foorumeista, niin siellähän ei ole niin, että siellä on yksi taho, joka tiedottaa ja kontrolloi sitä tiedottamista, vaan se on nimenomaan tällainen monelta monelle keskustelu, jossa ei ole mitään päätoimittajaa, ei ole sillä tavalla vastuullista instanssia, joka voisi puuttua ja olisi oikeus puuttua siihen keskusteluun. Joten samanlainen vastuukysymykset on selvästi, että kuka tahansa, joka tekee siellä jotain väärää, on itse vastuussa siitä. Ja tietenkin nimenomaan silloin, kun se täyttää tarpeeksi vakavan rikoksen tunnusmerkit, niin se tieto siitä, että kuka se todellinen lähettäjä on paljastettavissa ja löytyy. Niin tämä sulkeminen johtuu vain siitä, että tällä hetkellä tämä lainsäädännöllinen status tämän palvelimen kohdalla on hieman epäselvää Suomessa ja oikeastaan sen takia, että telelainsäädäntö on muuttunut ja siinä on jäänyt aukkoja lainsäädäntöön, jotka varmasti tullaan paikkaamaan, mutta tällä hetkellä siellä on pieni ongelma. Me ei tiedetä tarkkaan, että mikä on tällaisen palvelun luottamuksellisuuden suoja. Ja se on nyt tavallaan vain suomalainen ongelma. Että sillä aikaa, kun tämä mun palvelu on pyörinyt, niin on sen esimerkin pohjalta syntynyt monia muita vastaavia palveluja ympäri maailmaa. Ja mä nimenomaan näen, että nyt taas on heidän vuoronsa pyörittää tätä palloa. Eli on syntynyt tällainen verkosto, on syntynyt se kulttuuri. Ja tavallaan mun ei enää tarvitse olla se ainoa taho, joka pyörittää tällaista, vaan nämä muut maailmalla olevat palvelut varmasti pystyy nyt palvelemaan näitä käyttäjiä.
The net was never free. It was always an illusion. It was only a case of waiting for those who were really in power to decide that they were going to use their power. And now they're using their power. And nothing has changed really. Any society is as free as its inhabitants are capable of making it, and no freer. And that means taking the same risks in the net as one takes in any physical world. It is said that the tree of liberty must be continually refreshed with the blood of patriots. And so the question is, who are the patriots in that space that build the barricades and start those kinds of wars for net freedom? And we don't yet know how that's going to work. But I have not given up by any means the hope that the net still can be free. I just think that that wonderful illusion, that beautiful soap bubble, that the net was a new free space is now burst, and people can look around and say, well, now it's time to do the real work of creating a free net.
In Amsterdam we have this phrase, it's the name of our server, access for all, and that's still our program. You know, as long as that is not realized, as long as there are financial obstacles or no notion that there also is something like a public space beside state control and commerce. You know, I think, yeah, this freedom is still something very worthwhile. But of course, we see now that this first phase, this phase of the hype, of the introduction, you know, of the euphoria, comes to a close, and people who naively believe that we can route around certain things, get away from state control. I think that's a little naive, and it only comes from some people who are into programming, who think that actually the machines themselves can dictate the form of the net. And this is not true. The net is maybe now entering a social, political, economical realm. Yeah? And then it becomes something different.
Yes, possibly, maybe. It depends upon how badly people, individual people as a group, want it. Look at the example of China with fax machines, for instance. When the Tiananmen Square event happened, the only way that it was possible to get information out of China was not through the telephones, which were being censored, but through fax machines, which the Chinese government forgot about. Now we're in a similar situation where there is a technology which can potentially be used for liberatory purposes, but we don't know if it will be, because it depends upon how fast governments and citizens respond to each other and what the agendas of governments are with regard to how much control individual governments want. And I certainly don't think it's the same from nation to nation. The situation with regard to the German government is certainly not the same as the situation with regard to the Finnish government, say, although both of them are interested in how to limit free communication. However, we're looking toward a time where wires, as the only way of doing this communication, are going to go away. Not go away, but become only part of a network that involves satellites and digital phones and other ways that we don't yet know about that will increase the possibilities for unlimited communication, or at least for drilling little holes in the nation's firewall so that you can allow other communication to leak through. As long as it's still possible to drill holes, then there will always be people drilling holes, and there will always be information leaking through them. Is it possible that we will be able to turn those barriers that nations erect into a Swiss cheese where information just leaks right on through? Then possibly we can produce a situation where everyone is happy. I mean, the nation is saving face because they can tell their loyal citizens that they're doing everything in their power to restrict the flow of information, and at the same time as much information as is necessary is still flowing. Then perhaps we have the dynamic balance, which generally happens in real dynamic social situations. You never get perfect freedom. You sometimes get perfect oppression, but you never get perfect freedom. But maybe we can find something midway between that where everybody gets a little bit of what they need.
Well, traditionally, media and democracy have always been going together through this whole notion of the public, where you meet and where opinions have been exchanged or discussion has been going on. Either the salon or the street or the newspaper, books. And this whole realm, this public realm, has grown tremendously and changed. It was controlled very much and censored in the 20th century. It was also in a later stage very much commercialized, and some people even think that it has disappeared. But I see it as a process where just the form of this public realm is constantly being redefined, constantly changing. And when it goes together, that's the most beautiful thing, when you have a lot of newspapers, books, discussions in public access television, going together with the net, where the whole question of locality and contributions of people are much more interesting. So when these things come together, you can imagine that there will be something like an interesting new form of democracy, but not defined as a simple abstract set of rules or a constitution. I'm not very optimistic about the way in which the new media can change democracy. If it's in a crisis now, if there are so many scandals and if there is such a distrust amongst the population, it's not a task of the new media to change this crisis and to bring in a new sort of elan, because that's not possible. And actually, the internet itself, in relation to democracy, is now going through a very intensive experimental stage, and the outcome of that is not clear yet. Communities, I think it's very important, in my view, that we keep in mind the hybrid forms that we not only face on the internet and just disappear into cyberspace, but that we build interfaces to reality, to the city, through public terminals, through places where you can also meet. Where it's partly virtual and partly in just a city environment. I'm very much in favor of that, and that's actually also the reality in my view. The communities that are very effective and that are real communities are actually at the moment rather small. They are very productive, small, working units where people become friends, and networks that have a very clear goal. The digital city in Amsterdam, with its 50,000 inhabitants, which exists now almost 3-4 years, is in itself still not yet a community, because the communities have to grow slowly. You have to know each other, work together, meet, and then slowly something, is growing. And one cannot declare, just say from tomorrow on we'll have a community. That's impossible.
I think that we are sometimes in between. What I think that it's necessary to do, and it's actually very important, to give access to different underground groups, social movements, rights movements that we have, from gays to lesbians to civil rights movements. And I think it is very important maybe to found this group and to give money to this group, that they can actually have access and they have to have this special entrance to the net, because I think that this maybe is the most weak. Beside that, not all the artists has not only question of access, but they have not actually money and tools to develop the specific sites. The question is that I think now is the boom, and actually to the real artistic use it will be developed, if it will be in the future. Because I think that the same things is going on like it was the boom of the video. For example, 20 years ago. It started and most of the people were using this in very, very formal way. In one way, because you have all these things, but sometimes they are very only for fun, kind of chat thing. And I think that the medium and the artistic tool is always kind of a critical approach, kind of counter-culture approach. So, and actually I'm seeing some very good web artistic work. that I think that they are thinking about this, connected the things with politics, with kind of, I don't know, also discussing the intimate position of the subject, the user, so on. So I think that after this big boom, it's actually coming the time how, in which way really using aesthetically, artistically, and in communication way the web. For example, I'm actually a video artist, but we made, I'm working with another woman, Ina Schmidt, and we made a website. And we were thinking not to use the web just to promote ourselves, you know, bio and so on. So we made a website called Axis of Life. And we wanted to have this critical attitude, so we use a lot of very dual and very provocative historical things. For example, the things connected with the war, things connected with East-West, Russia, and so on. So, we wanted also to discuss if it's really you can use today history like a free ideological tool. I think it's not possible. Everything is very, very connected, especially technology and communication, always with power. But also power is changing. So it's our, like an artist, we can't put only general the things, but we have to really discuss how power, how communication, how technology changes, and actually try to develop this revolution, try to use the technology for real communication, for the people to have access, for artists, and not just big companies and money and capitalists that promoting big, I don't know, promoting selling, promoting big companies and so on. So it's, yes, it's really questionable if it's a revolution. Maybe it's evolution of the revolution of media and technology.
I'm not somebody who thinks that the net even is a space apart from other spaces. To me, the net is a kind of an extension or a prosthesis or a kind of augmentation of existing space, of existing workspace, which has, of course, it changes the situation once you get that prosthesis. It changes what you can do, how you think about the world, how you think about your role as an artist. So I think it's certainly an area that artists are going to be working in. Personally, I'm interested in it, in how I can actually sort of bridge these sort of, what I see as kind of conceptual or sort of artificial divisions between what's called cyberspace and the spaces that I'm more used to working in. My conception of an artist is someone who is not bound to a particular medium or a particular tool. I mean, this was the great sort of, revelation of the art of the 70s and the early 80s, that someone could be a conceptual artist. I mean, a conceptual artist doesn't necessarily just work with concepts. It's just that he or she is not bound to a particular medium. So, I mean, the idea of somebody trying to be, of course there will be people who will describe themselves as net artists, but to me, it's just one of many available mediums. I mean, it does have this distinction of basically connecting things that were disconnected before into a huge network, so that the gallery is not, a white windowless box anymore. I mean, there's a data wire going outside of it to the rest of the world, and I don't think you can ignore that. On the other hand, I don't really think that someone can exist wholly in this, basically fictional world called cyberspace.
On selvästi kaksi linjaa. Siinä voidaan yrittää ennustaa tulevaisuutta ja tavallaan määrätä sitä. Ja sitten toisaalta vaan voidaan opportunistisesti mennä mukana, kun uusia ideoita syntyy ja ne tulee suosituiksi. Ja siinä suhteessa mä uskon, että internet on ehkä paras mahdollinen malli siitä, että tämä jälkimmäinen tapa on se oikea. Markkinat ratkaisee, käyttäjät ratkaisee, koko ajan kokeillaan hirveän suurta määrää ideoita. Jotkut niistä jää ja tulee suosituiksi, jotkut kuolee pois. Siinä suhteessa tulevaisuuden ennustaminen on hyvin vaikeaa, mutta hyvin selvää on se, että internet palveluna monipuolistuu koko ajan, sinne tulee ääntä, sinne tulee liikkuvaa kuvaa, mutta missä muodossa ja mitä sillä voi tehdä on sitten eri asia. Pitää nimenomaan löytää ne asiat, joihin se todella on ratkaisu.
Jam dihela. Timpaman kong esi.
Elle devient plus petite.
Ogni giorno la rete globale di computer.
Join us.
Siinä nämä pelaajien roolit on kyllä siinä suhteessa selkeitä, että kyllä siellä niissä isoissa pelaajissa, jotka tulevaisuudessa tulee dominoimaan tätä verkkoa, niin siellä on kaikki nämä perinteiset pelaajat. Siellä on mediayhtiöt, siellä on teleyhtiöt, siellä on nämä uudet, todella uusmediayhtiöt ja internetyhtiöt, jotka on noussut esiin. Ne kaikki toimii samoilla markkinoilla ja kilpailee toistensa kanssa. Ja kenelläkään ei ole sellaista selvää etulyöntiasemaa.
Uanset hvor de starter, vil IBM være hos dem.
Just plug in.
Kong esi uye wong.
I think that the good scenario is that we have what I've called the web-wide world, in which we have a worldwide community of people who can speak with each other instantaneously and thereby use that power of speech to break down barriers between nations, and that will be done before the nations themselves are ready to give up that power, just as multinational corporations have completely bypassed the rules of nations in order to create their structures, which are also structures of power. Now perhaps we can learn from the way that the multinational corporations bypass nations in order to do it, for ways for us to do it using networks of communication as the same tool. I think it's possible for us to have a worldwide community in which people can exchange intellectual, cultural, just fun information over a network which is largely free, but which must continually be kept free by being fought for. I think that the possibilities for individual growth and cultural growth and change and ramification through that are endless. And it's not going to happen magically. There is no question but what we are going to have to work to get it very hard. But the possibility of making it succeed is very, very bright.